Welcome to our channel. The conditions of the Ukraine-Russia war are starting to get worse. Both Russia and Ukraine are preparing to use all their strength to seize dominance in this war. The current state of the war continues in favor of the heroic Ukrainian army, and Zelensky's braves receive historical victories in succession against the Russian troops. The unbelievable Ukrainian victory, the latest of which took place in Sevastopol, was achieved thanks to massive, hitherto unprecedented drone army attacks. At the same time, the Ukrainian armed forces is making big gains in the Kherson region, pushing towards the Russian border in Kharkiv to save the last 26 settlements. It also pushes back the Russians with an insurmountable defense in the Donbas region. The Ukrainian warriors who left the Russian administration helpless carried out successful operations that no world state had even thought possible since the beginning of the war on February 24th. The joint liberation plans of the Ukrainian President Zelensky and the Ukrainian top generals, who have critical powers in this war, are the biggest factor in the defeat of the Russian troops. So were only Ukrainian male soldiers taking part in the operations carried out by the Ukrainian army, where it almost devastated the Russians? We can find the answer to this question in the Ukrainian female soldiers, who serve in the Ukrainian army and carry the title of angels without wings, who are just as beautiful and as brave as Ukraine's beauties. These beautiful and brave Ukrainian women warriors played a role in many missions, and these Ukrainian women warriors continued their duties as the behind-the-scenes force of this war. We haven't heard much about the wingless angels blessing the Ukrainian army, but the Ukrainian Ministry of Defense honored these beautiful warriors by highlighting the importance of these Ukrainian women soldiers in the war. Ukraine's Ministry of Defense praised the Ukrainian women fighters who helped defeat the Russian-occupied troops as this bloody war in the Eastern European country continues. The Ukrainian Ministry of Defense announced that they had eliminated more than 70,000 occupiers, with the photographs of Ukrainian female soldiers, and the Ukrainian Ministry of Defense underlined that the Ukrainian female fighters fulfilled their roles very well in this process. Since the beginning of the Ukraine-Russian war, more Ukrainian women have joined Zelensky's army, and about 50,000 Ukrainian female fighters have served in the Ukrainian armed forces in combat and non-combat roles. Diana, a 23-year-old Ukrainian who enlisted in the army 6 months before the Ukraine-Russia war, said, "When I was little, I didn't think I would be in the military. Like every little girl, I wanted to live a happy life, work to be able to travel and see the world." The statements of this Ukrainian citizen named Diana were both heartbreaking and shed light on how hard the Ukrainians achieved these historical achievements. Ukrainian women have never left their country alone in this liberation struggle. Thousands of Ukrainian women like Diana still serve in Zelensky's heroic army. Ukrainian military officials said that 10,000 Ukrainian women enlisted in the military were either at the forefront of the battlefield or were working jobs that could send them there. The rest are on active duty and in other branches of the Ukrainian military. Women are not required to serve in the military in Ukraine, but the Kiev government is considering recruiting some Ukrainian women with certain skills to join them as mandatory. At the end of 2021, about 32,000 women were serving in the Ukrainian army. Now that number has exceeded almost 50,000. Evgenia Emerald, a special regimental officer, stated that in 2014, when Moscow annexed Crimea from Ukraine, she wanted to join the Ukrainian army, but was unable to join the Ukrainian army because Emerald had a baby at the time. So this clearly shows us that brave Ukrainian women can join the Ukrainian army without any obligation. On the other hand, in the Russian army, this situation operates with the mobilization decision made compulsory by Vladimir Putin. This is the subtle difference between the two armies. The casualty count on both sides is not updated regularly. However, the commander-in-chief of the Ukrainian armed forces, Valery Zaluzhny, announced in August that his country had lost 9,000 military personnel. While these losses pushed the governments of both countries to include female citizens in the army, thousands of female citizens in Ukraine are eager to join the Ukrainian army voluntarily. When talking about the casualties, Russian Defense Minister Sergei Shoigu announced that 5,937 Russian soldiers have been killed since Russia's invasion of Ukraine in February. No one trusted these statements of the Russian defense minister, because Russia's losses are now almost 75,000. Russian forces are experiencing some setbacks as the Russian army continues to face the recently advancing Ukrainian troops to retake parts of Kherson Oblast. Meanwhile, it's reported that the morale of the Russian troops is low and they have difficulty in supplying equipment and armor. Now we will examine together how the Russian army actually became like this since the beginning of the war. We will deal with the responsible causes and consequences of this situation together. What causes armies to lose the will to fight? Here are the facts that history has told us and the details that Putin will soon learn. Every battle has descriptive images. The Ukraine war has already provided some memorable highlights, showing the contrast in leadership styles of Russian President Vladimir Putin and his Ukrainian counterpart Volodymyr Zelensky. Recent photos of Putin typically show him in a suit, crouching at the absurdly long conference table, in a large, sterile room, with a general or bureaucrat at the other end. The title of the impression given by this state of Putin may be as follows: "A paranoid and isolated dictator is at work." Compare these images of Putin with those of Zelensky. One shows him standing steadfastly with his circle of counselors in Kiev at night, after vowing not to leave the city even though he and his family are in danger. Other photos show him tired, polished, and bearded, exchanging with soldiers on the front lines. McCausland, who is also the national security advisor for CBS Radio and Television, states that the footage offers a lesson in leadership. McCausland, who offers leadership workshops to companies, nonprofits, and government agencies through his company Diamond 6, said, "Look at both photos for who you want to work for Putin or for Zelensky. I don't care if you're in the military or working for a company. The decision, it's pretty easy to give." According to McCausland and others, armies lose their will to fight when they lose their faith in their leaders. They say the soldiers did not expect the generals or other leaders to crouch in the front-line trenches with them, but they want to know if their leaders care about them and respect their sacrifices. If you want to know how a leader can inspire an army to superhuman levels of stamina, consider this popular tale of Alexander the Great, one of history's greatest commanders. As Alexander led his scorched army across a brutal desert in the pursuit of an enemy, the scouts turned to him with a ladle of precious water on his helmet. They gave him his helmet in front of his army. Alexander thanked the soldiers and then poured the water on the ground in front of his soldiers. Alexander declared that he would not take water unless all his men drank the same water. His soldiers applauded the great leader. Alexander the Great never lost a war. One historian later wrote of Alexander's affair, "The effect of this act was so extraordinary that the water Alexander wasted was as good as a drink for every man in his army." If a government is corrupt and lacks the trust of the people, their armies will lose their will to fight. We can see this happening in Russia, where people have long suffered from a social malaise. Russian citizens have experienced the traumatic disintegration of the Soviet Union, widespread corruption, political apathy, and the crushing of independent media and dissident voices. Discomfort affecting civilian Russia began to spread to his army. These signs are easily seen in the thousands of Russian men who left Russia to escape conscription. This is pretty convincing proof that the forces of passion aren't really effectively locked into this battle. It's quite interesting to encounter troops deserting or leaving on the battlefield. But now the forces of passion seem to support Ukraine. The men and women of the Ukrainian army know what they're fighting for. Here are the details that Russian leader Vladimir Putin needs to learn. And these details the Russian leader in the future will experience quite painfully. To be notified of new videos, please do not forget to subscribe to our channel and turn on notifications. Thank you for watching us.